Hey, hello everyone. Welcome to Shamanism, Metaphysics, and Grace. Today I'm with my favorite astrologer, Jyoti Wind. Once again, Jyoti, we've got a number of aspects in store for us these coming 2 weeks. I'm looking forward to your insights.
Well, thank you, Lauren. Me too.
Yeah. So
So
where do we jump in?
let's jump in on the new moon on November 1st.
Great.
It's at 6:47 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time. It's still daylight time then. And it's a new moon in Scorpio. So it has its own intensity. And the sun and moon are together with the new moon, and they're both trine Saturn. And so it gives a lot of perseverance and a willingness to keep on going, shoulder to the wheel, keep on going till you get to where you want to go. So it's great for that. And there also is a grand trine in water in this new moon chart with Mars in Cancer, Mercury in Scorpio, and Neptune in Pisces. And these are later degrees, 28 degrees roughly, 27. And a new moon in Scorpio is water, a grand trine in the water signs. This leads to potentially a lot of emotional healing. So it gives the opportunity for insights, spiritual understandings, emotional intelligence, and becoming more attuned to your own emotional nature.
Yeah, Jyoti, when I think of Scorpio, I think about the intensity of Scorpio and would you also think that same way?
Absolutely. It goes without saying. Scorpio rules the eighth house in a chart. It's the eighth sign. And it is about diving deep, investigating, feeling, sensing, wanting to know the bottom lines. It's not happy with fluff and surface stuff. It really wants to cut to the chase and get to the bottom lines. So this is a deep emotional time frame. This is a deep emotional grand trine in water, getting to deeper feelings.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So maybe accessing those deeper feelings usually we aren't usually tapped into.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And as I've said before, sometimes when you have a grand trine, there's a tendency to be lazy. There's a tendency to say, "Oh, I know how to do that stuff. I'll get to it." However, if you have what's called a kite, which is a grand trine, 3 planets, and then one of those planets has an opposition to another planet, to a fourth planet, that's what keeps things moving. So in this case, we have Mars, Mercury, and Neptune, and Mars is opposed by Pluto by not even, I don't think it's even a half a degree, a half a degree. And so it's all very tight, by degrees. And so Pluto opposing the Mars point of this grand trine is going to keep things moving. It's going to have us looking at what are we manifesting from these deeper emotional places. Is it shadow material? Is it authentic us? Is it things coming up, bubbling out up from the uh, deeper parts of ourselves to be looked at and worked on and transformed?
Something came up for me while I was listening to you is that deeper kind of excavation of emotions. We might see that in relationships with people that normally hold their emotions close in check, might not be doing that, and it could come as a surprise.
I think that is the surprise because Juno, the asteroid of relationship in this chart, is also squaring Pluto by degree. And I have a note here that says relationships are challenging.
Mm.
So
That's
there's a challenge there for the person who kind of plays their cards close to their chest, all of a sudden could blurt some things out without meaning to, or has suddenly a deeper insight into themselves, or the relationship itself suddenly is looking at, okay, what needs to be transformed here if we want to continue. I mean, there's always that choice. You know,
sure.
do we want to continue or do we want to go our own way, or what's the, what's up for us in the moment? And so it's looking at what in the relationship works and what doesn't work, and do we want to work on it?
Yeah, I know for myself, I always expect myself to go deep on these emotions and being reflective and sharing. Not so willing to be on the receiving end of it, though.
Yes, yes, yes. Um, and yet, in order to hold that space for somebody else or for other people, we have to do our own work too. Although nobody's perfect, just because somebody's helping doesn't mean they're, enlightened and ready to cycle off.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
Yeah.
All different degrees. So there's challenges and power plays possible because it's Scorpio, and when there's Scorpio, it's fixed water. Like it, how it feels is how it feels. That's it. That's it. Not entertaining different feelings, not entertaining different thoughts, not being able to be easily budged from how they feel. This is it, in the moment. And so it has its own stubbornness, fixed water, its own fixedness. And so it can be very positive, especially with that trine to Saturn, for laying new foundations, transforming what's not working and then laying new foundations and being responsible, being that shoulder to the wheel and keep on going. Well, let's do this. Let's figure this out, or let's make the changes we need to make.
Yeah, I'm glad you put that positive spin on the end there, because it does feel like it could be a bit of a rub. And when I'm thinking about this would be a 2 week period. We may be feeling that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
And there's a couple other things going on along with that
of
over
course,
the following couple days, including an election,
right.
which people are looking at. But one other thing about this chart is that Venus is squaring Saturn. And anytime Venus is squaring Saturn, there's always a desire to look at trust.
Mm,
Do I trust that what I need will come? Do I trust that this person is who I think they are? Any of that. I mean, it's starting to move on. So earlier, before the new moon, is probably when Venus will exactly square Saturn. And so it's kind of like working through that whole several days beforehand, and then the new moon, and we're still looking at trust and how are we doing with our trust issues. And
okay.
it's also because Pallas, the asteroid of intelligence, is right there with Venus. So it's also asking us, do we trust our own intelligence? Do we trust that we know what we know? And that do we trust ourselves to show up in ways we need to?
Hmm.
So not just the universe, not just trusting in other people, but in this case especially, are we trusting ourselves to do what we need to do?
Yeah.
Yeah. And there might be some good insights. Mercury is opposing the planet Uranus. We might have some good dreams. We might have some good intuitive flashes that say, okay, this is what I want to do. This is the next step. Any of that is absolutely possible.
Wonderful.
Okay. Okay, so the next thing I want to look at is November 3rd. So that's the day we are back in standard time for those in the US. And Mars is entering Leo. moving out of Cancerian home, food, family into Leo, the king, the queen, you know? And remembering our humility is important, because a king or queen without any humility has no kingdom or queendom. We need to remember our humility. So that's kind of a side piece. The real piece of that day is that Mars is opposing Pluto. That's a day of intensity, no matter how you look at it, whether you're looking at it from a personal point of view, a global point of view. That's a day of intensity.
So, Jyoti, how do you spend days of intensity?
A lot of times I try to clear my schedule, you know. Some days I can't. But I know that when Mars is opposing Pluto, confrontation is pretty easy and quick, you know. And so I try to keep myself out of the line of fire, basically,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and because of that intensity, a lot of times I'll have something I want to dive into that day,
Mm.
you know, personally, or, you know, I might do a shamanic journey or something around something, or do some research, or create something, you know, like a class or something like that, because it's the energy is intense. So how can I use it for myself
Yeah.
if I'm looking at an intense body of work?
Yeah. Yeah. So using that intensity for good, and rather than butting it up against someone else's intensity.
Right. And no matter how I try to structure that day, Lauren,
Yeah.
I'm
It'll
always
happen.
called out into the world. I'll be driving somewhere, you know, and yeah, yeah, it doesn't always work the way I want it
Right.
to, but I always learn from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Understand.
So it's just a day of intensity, and you know, um, I don't know how far to go into it. I don't want to engender fear, you know, and so, but Mars opposed Pluto is an intense day, and it can be a day of war. It can be a day of attack. It can be a day of uh, all the Libra diplomacy just not working, you know, and yet it might in most people's lives, it might be nothing. You know, it might be just a day that passes, and maybe there were some, you know, deeper feelings going on that day, but nothing really that somebody could put their finger on. And it happens that way sometimes.
Sure. And it also depends on where that shows up in your chart,
It
right?
also shows up in where you are in the world.
Uh,
You know, from an astrocartography point
sure.
of view,
Good
when you
point.
take the planets and put it on a map of the world, because last October 6th, when the whole Gaza Israeli thing was happening, if I'm not mistaken, Mars was squaring Pluto. Now,
Mhm.
I didn't feel it in my own life here. It was probably a day maybe with some frustration, but that aspect was happening over that part of the world. So wherever this is happening in whatever part of the world, and I don't know, I haven't looked actually, but that would be an indicator of something.
Yeah.
Um, Says I didn't think of it, so now that I thought of it, I'll see what I can
Yeah.
find
Yeah.
out.
Let's add it to the show notes, Jyoti.
Yeah, or as a response if I don't find it before you post it.
Okay.
I'll do a
Okay.
comment or something if I can
Great.
find it. Okay, and then the last one I wanted to address is Mercury entering its shadow on November 7th, and it will be in Sagittarius the whole cycle. So it enters its shadow on November 7th, turns retrograde on November 25th, direct on December 15th, and catches up January 2nd. So that whole time it'll be in Sagittarius, and it's really about examining our philosophy of life, what we think is true, what we give lip service to, what we kind of create for ourselves as this is how life is, and this is my place in it, or how small or how big you want to make that, but it's Sagittarius, so it's going to be very philosophical, and it's also about looking at the bigger picture and what is your bigger picture.
That's interesting that we're led into that after a period of intensity there earlier in the month.
Yes. I mean, November, November just has the first half is pretty strong and intense, and then Pluto will leave Capricorn after 15 years and move into Aquarius for 20 years by the time we get to the 19th, 20th of November.
Right.
Yeah. So I think the whole month has a depth and intensity and an invitation for transformation that most Novembers don't have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, usually in November, we're worried about going into the holiday period, right? And
Yes.
all that comes with that, but we've got a whole set of gifts there at the beginning of the month waiting for us.
Right. And just the week before Thanksgiving, with Pluto going into Aquarius for 20 years. That's huge, Lauren. I mean, we're really moving like from one epoch to another epoch to another epoch. I mean, a new dispensation, and balancing the highs and lows, balancing plenty with scarcity. How do we balance those kinds of things? Because also Jupiter's squaring Saturn off and on until next June, and so there's that balance of having, not having, things being full and things being very thin. So how do we balance between those two energies over the next I don't know what it is, 10 months or something.
Sure.
9 months.
It sounds like taking a lot of personal responsibility with our own nervous systems.
Oh, yeah, well put. Yeah, because that's where the balance has to be, whatever's going on out here.
Exactly.
That's where the balance has to be.
Yeah, and if I show up dysregulated, no matter what state you're in, I'm going to impact you, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And so we can bless the one or two Mercury retrograde cycles that will happen in between now and next June for inviting us to come inside, and just be still as the mind is possible to be, and the breath, and make it a point to have a place to go where you can come back to yourself. And so that Mercury retrograde is that invitation. Even if after it goes direct, we're off and running again, there's going to be another opportunity in the late winter, spring for Mercury to go retrograde again. I don't have it at hand, but it does it 3 times a year. So chances are there's another one in the springtime. And so it gives us that continual kind of invitation, to go inside. Because the energy is speeding up, and once Pluto goes into Aquarius, you'll notice the speed up of energy. I think most people will feel a kind of amplification of something. And for me, boy, I know this sounds oversimplified, but breathing has never been so important. And, conscious breathing, just sitting with myself sometimes in the middle of the night and just focusing on my breath. And every time I go off in a storyline, I come back to focusing on my breath, and that for me is what helps my nervous system relax when nothing else does.
Yeah. 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 It's time. It's a good time if we don't have a practice already
Yes,
to begin working on one. I don't think anyone ever regrets creating a practice of stillness or meditation or whatever speaks to you to calm that nervous system.
absolutely. It can be breathing, it can be Tai Chi, it can be going for a walk out in nature, laying your heart on the earth. I mean, there's a million things that can help you if you see it as a practice, if you use it as a practice.
Yeah. Well, we'll
Yeah.
get plenty of opportunity to practice that practice.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Anything
Absolutely.
else, Jyoti?
Um, I'll just throw this in here. I have been aware of, survival techniques since the 70s, reading a lot of Edgar Casey and Nostradamus and Ruth Montgomery, of coming Earth changes, and you can call it climate change, you can call it whatever you want, but that the Earth would be going through its own evolutionary changes, and we're living on her, so that's going to involve us. And the increasing number of floods and fires have really gotten my attention even more lately. And a lot of the things that I was looking at as what they're calling now emergency preparedness are kind of outmoded because of the new technologies and things like that, like solar items and stuff. So I'm looking at the potential of putting a free course together, or a free day or 2 days of emergency preparedness, a course that, like, what to have on hand, what to know about,
Yeah.
what could assist you if you needed it.
Wonderful, Jyoti. What a gift.
Well, it's gifted to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we'll wait for you to announce when that might be. It also made me think about just reminding folks, and particularly as we approach the year end, it's a wonderful time to consider a personal reading. And we hear your insights every 2 weeks about the effects on the collective, but knowing how those affect our personal chart really brings things closer to home. And so someone might be listening that would be interested in gifting a reading to someone or for themselves. Jyoti, what's the process?
They could go to my website, www.jyotiwindastrology.com, and click on the astrology links, and it'll take you to where you can order a chart reading.
Wonderful. And you do chart readings for children, adults, couples,
Families,
families. Okay.
places to live in the world, that might be, or even the country, but the map is of the world, that might be more amenable for what your next step is.
Wonderful. Great.
Yes.
Jyoti, thank you so very much for all you shared today.
Oh, you're welcome, Lauren. Thank you.